you're kind of doing teaching in action when people are up with
Right.
the standards and the laws.
We're going to get started now because we're recording for the Mezuzah workshop with Rochester Scribe, Rabbi Chastain, graciously giving us a real insider scoop of the Mezuzah, what makes a Mezuzah, what makes it kosher, what are some of the pitfalls, and take it away, Rabbi.
Absolutely. We're going to talk all about that. You're going to see all the different materials that a sofer, that a scribe uses. We'll talk about the mezuzah, about the source. We'll do a buyer's guide for mezuzahs so you know what you're looking for. And we'll talk about the mitzvah and all the things that go into it. So first, I really wanted to start by talking about the source of the mitzvah. And we have a little presentation that's going to be played for us over here that I put together. And the source of the mitzvah of mezuzah is pretty fundamental. It comes straight out of the Shema. We have these verses that we say them every day. We say them in the morning, we say them at night, we say them before we go to sleep. And in the Shema it says, you're supposed to write these words, the words of the Shema, the words of the Torah. They should be on the mezuzos, on the doorposts of your house, to be sharechem on your gates. Right? This is a mitzvah straight out of the Torah. Not only straight out of the Torah, straight out of the Shema, one of the most fundamental prayers that we have. And that is the source of the mitzvah of the mezuzah. And there's ideas about the mezuzah even earlier in the Torah than the Shema. You know, where's the first place that you think of when you hear something with the doorposts? Anything that you think of? Anything strikes you?
Mm.
I'm giving you cheat sheets.
Gates.
Even when you think back to our time in Egypt, you remember right before we went out of Egypt, before the plague of the firstborn, Hashem, God tells us that we're supposed to paint our doorposts with blood. And there's this idea that when we did that, Hashem saved us from the oncoming plague. And there's this idea as well that when we have a mezuzah, there's a certain shmir, there's a certain guarding. Hashem is watching over our houses and keeping us safe. And that is part of the idea of mezuzah. And there is definitely a shmir that happens. I've even had some crazy stories with mezuzah. This is not in the presentation over here. But a lot of people, when they God forbid they get sick or something that happens to their family, they get their mezuzahs checked. Now we're supposed to get our mezuzahs checked anyways. Really, it says twice in 7 years. So once in every about 3.5 years, it's good to get our mezuzahs checked. But I've had stories even myself. I've had stories here in Rochester. There was a family I was close with. They had a daughter who was born, brand new baby girl. She had a horrible heart defect. And they checked all their mezuzahs. And on the mezuzah of the door of her room, the word livavecha, your heart, was cracked in half. I fixed it, but well, we got them a new one. That one we really needed to get a new one. They got a new mezuzah. Thank God you should know that this young lady is doing pretty well. They live in Florida now, but they're doing well. Thank God. But there's that's just one story. Should I tell you one other interesting story? I'm going to tell you a story. I was in Eretz Yisrael. You mentioned I lived in Israel for 8 years. There was a story. This was actually not a hustle mezuzah, not a invalid mezuzah, but it is a mezuzah story. That one of my friends, his wife was pregnant. She was in her 9th month. They had an ultrasound. The baby was in breech position. Baby was upside down. And the rabbi told them to check all their mezuzahs. And they're checking, they're bringing them to the scribe one by one. They were all fine. The last one, they take it out of the case. The mezuzah was upside down. The mezuzah was upside down. They checked it, it was fine, put it back right side up, put the mezuzah on their house, and went back to the next appointment. Baby had flipped. Yeah, plenty of stories like that. These are just a couple personal ones. Every sefer has got a bag full of these. Just gonna make a quick bracha. Oh man. But yeah, every sefer's got a bag full of these types of stories. Let's keep going. And the Talmud also is replete with stories of how the mezuzah protects the people who are inside the house. And out on the outside of the mezuzah, there's a few things written, really 2 things written. But one of them is this name of Hashem here, spelled Shin Dalet Yod. We don't actually pronounce it the way it's written. We say Shakai, but that stands for the Shin is Shomer, the Dalet is Dalsos, the Yud is Yisrael. It's the guardian of the doors of Israel. That's what it stands for. Because when you have this on your door, Hashem is standing and protecting your house. Yeah. I'll have to a different time because I don't want to get too sidetracked by stories. Just tell you the story in the Talmud about Onkelos. Onkelos was a personality from the Talmud who also wrote a translation of the Torah into Aramaic. There's the brief version is he came from Roman royalty. Caesar tried to take him back to kill him, and every time that the Caesar would send messengers to try to bring Onkelos back, he would engage them in Torah study and they would convert. So he told the last group, like, don't talk to him, don't do anything. And on the way out, he kissed the mezuzah. They couldn't, they were too curious. So they're like, what are you doing over here? So he told them about the idea of mezuzah and said, by flesh and blood, the king sends out his people to do battle while he sits in the castle. But by the Jewish people, Hashem stands guard for us while we're inside. So they all converted also. That's an interesting story. That's the short version.
Use those sound and light.
That's okay. All right, let's keep going. So it's a mitzvah to put up a mezuzah by the entrance of the door of the room. And I want to tell you, I'm going to debunk a myth right now. People think they only need a mezuzah on the front door, but it's not true, right? It says mezuzos, right, on your door posts with an S, plural. So it's not just the exterior door; it's all the doors into all the rooms that you live in. Right? We don't put them on a bathroom, and if it's a room that's smaller than 4 by 4 cubits, so somewhere between 6 by 6 or 8 by 8 feet. That's always something you can have a rabbi come in and tell you, does this room still need a mezuzah or not? You can have walk-in closets that do and walk-in closets that don't. It depends on how lavish your closet is, right? But people have this idea in their head. I've seen it so many times that they only need a mezuzah on their front door. But it's not true. They need a mezuzah on all their doors. So in my house, I have about 15 of them. So it's something that
Can I share something?
absolutely, Rabbi.
No, I won't. But
You're always welcome.
this is a Rabbi, this Rabbi Chastain, Scribe, our in-house Scribe, is he's saying the basic Jewish law. It means every doorway. I read something about 10 years ago of a deeper metaphysical reason why. Like you're telling me the basic Jewish law, every single doorway. But why? Like why nice big fat one on the door? Why can't it be enough to
Right.
mark it
A
as
big
Jewish?
one. Hashem's on the outside. And everything on the inside is good.
So why? So I heard a beautiful metaphysical idea. Every room in our house is another function of life. The dining room, the bedroom, the living room,
Right,
the parlor room,
the office.
the office.
Right.
Everything. It's literally a different.
We try to escape that one.
Oh, sorry.
It's a different facet of your life. And the idea of the mezuzah, how does it bring protection? Because it connects our fragmented selves to the oneness. So that explains why every room, not just this is where it says just do it,
Right.
do it or else. It makes it resonate. So it's really about connecting every function of ourselves to Hashem Echad. Anyways,
Thank you. No, please. If there's other things that you want to add, that's very meaningful. Yashikah. And now we're going to jump into speaking a little bit about the supplies that I have here, and then we'll go from there to a mezuzah buyer guide. Here we go. So we're going to talk about necessary soccer supplies. I do want to mention that the words of Torah that we're speaking and learning today should be dedicated in memory of my Rosh Yeshiva who just passed away, my rabbi. His name is Rabbi Daniel Lehrfield. He taught me for 6 years in Israel. So this should be for an Eli Neshama of his. He just passed away yesterday. So it should be in his merit. We are still speaking over Torah in his name. So we'll talk about the necessary soccer supplies. So first we're going to talk about the kulmus.
just because Sophrus translate, please.
Sapras would be Pretty much everything that we're talking about here. Sofer is a scribe. Safras are all the things that the scribe makes. So a Sefer Torah, a Torah, Tefillin, phylacteries, Mezuzah. This is a Megillah that I have over here that I'll show at some point. But the first thing we're going to talk about is the kulmus. I'm going to give you these to play with here. Hold on. Let me give you a couple. The kulmus is these. I cut these myself.
Oh.
I cut them myself. And we'll talk about how I cut them. I actually have those supplies as well. But the kulmus is what I use whenever I'm writing anything, whether it be a mezuzah, which is a smaller tip, or a megillah, which is bigger, or even a Sefer Torah, which is bigger still, right? Bigger the font size that you're writing, the bigger the point of the quill. So some people say you have to write with a reed. That's the Sephardic tradition. The Ashkenazic tradition is to write with a feather. But Rashi even mentions the use of metal pens. It happens to be that there are things that they fix that just needs a little tweaking with an isograph pen. So there are things, and there are people that you may notice that on the type of writing used called Saba Shuris, there's actually crowns on the letters. I'll show you what I mean here. If you look here, let me bring this over to you. And I can point it out on different slides as we get there. But there are these crowns on top of the letters. So some people will do the crowns with one of those isographic pens. The writing's actually kosher without the crowns, but the crowns are supposed to be there. But it would be kosher even without them. Some people put in, even though they want to write everything with the quill, they'll put in the crowns with an isograph pen or a radiograph pen, as long as you load it with special ink, which we'll talk about when we get there. So I've never used the reed. I'm not sure how those write. I've seen people that use, but I've never used them. I always use one of these quills, which I use a turkey feather. It's a nice wide feather. It's easy to cut, works pretty well. And that's what I use for all the things that I write. Let's keep going. So when I make my kulmus, I actually have here, I have a glasses case. You wonder why is a glasses case on the table? Well, it's a pretty thick glasses case. It's a nice case to keep razors in. So I've got a couple different razors in here. Scalpels, like surgical blades. So I've got a number 11 and a number 15. This one,
Show the camera more.
say it again.
Sure.
This one's the 11. So that's more of a straight blade. And then I've got the 15, which is more of a curved blade. It's this one here, more of a curved blade. That's the number 15. And then I also have other small razors here that I use to split the tip of the feather. And that's these here. I use these here to actually go to the tip of the feather and split it. Yeah, and these are razor sharp, as the name indicates. They are very, very sharp, and these scalpels are very strong, and they will cut straight through those turkey feathers. And really, the way that I do it, I even go through it over here. When I get one of these feathers, first thing I do is I take off the actual feather, right, leaving just more the hard, bony looking part in the middle. If you don't do that, it's kind of hard to write. Some people like leaving the pretty feather intact, but it gets a little bit difficult to work with practically. Some people just rip off, the part that's closer to your hand and leave a little pretty plumage at the top. To each their own. I really like pulling it all off. And actually, you don't even really have to cut it off. You grab it at the top and just pull, and the feather will come. It will come right off. So after that, then you take the number 11 blade, and you have this one is actually a pretty strong cut because you have to pop off the tip. Once you do that, you can use the 11 and then into the 15 to start actually forming the tip of your quill pen. And then from there, once you get it formed nicely, then you put it against the table and you slice off the tip at a bit of an angle. As you can see when you look at the kulmus, it's got a little bit of an angle to it. It's not cut straight flat across,
Right.
it's on a little bit of an
Yeah.
angle, and then you split the tip. That's what you use that last razor for,
Mm.
to split the tip of it. Yeah. This also is for cleaning out. When you open up one of these feathers, it's not completely hollow. It's very easy to remove the matter that's inside there, but you do have to go in there and get it out. Otherwise, it doesn't hold the ink well. Yeah. Let's keep going. Oh, this is the final cut. See how I cut it at an angle there? And then I split the tip. He looks like he split the tip before he cut it. I don't usually do that. And then you try it out and make sure you can write with it. Yeah. Each nib, which is what we're going to call the tip of it, each letter is really 3 nibs high. And what I mean, see, do I have a? It's not every single letter, but it's most letters. I wonder if I have a letter chart. I'm not sure if I have a letter chart with me. If I do, I'll show you what I'm. Oh, here we go. I'm going to show this to the camera and then I'll come show it to you. But it's got boxes so that you can actually see. Each one of these boxes represents one kulmus width. So, like this letter, which is a Zion, is 1, 2, 3 boxes.
Mm.
So it'd be 3 kulmus widths large. So you can see how small this would be for those, right? And it can be very small. You have some other letters that are taller, but your average letter, most of your letters are 1, 2, 3 boxes. They're usually 3 by 3. So you want to gauge your kulmus against whatever you're writing. So let's say I'm writing a mezuzah. This is a little cloth. This is parchment for a mezuzah. So I'm going to make sure that I cut it in a way where it will fit within the lines. The lines that we have here, we'll talk about soon. They're called sirtot. They're guidelines. And I want to make sure that this is too big for this. Yeah, this would be too big a kulmus to actually be able to do any of the larger letters in those lines.
Mm.
Yeah. So there's a lot going on there. It happens to be when I write a mezuzah, I use, I'm going to show it to the camera also. I use a tikkun, and this, one of the things it shows me, so a tikkun in this case is a temple. And this actually, these little indicators here show me how to space out my lines. You see, I have these lines as well. So it helps me have a guide to be able to space it properly. Yeah. So show that to the camera one more time, but you have these lines that are going down, and also you have notes on the side that tell you how to space everything when you're writing it, so that you leave yourself enough room. And it's really important when you're writing a mezuzah, because mezuzahs have to be written in order. So you can't just like start messing around at the beginning of a line and then go to the end of the line and work back. You can't do it. You have to write it in order. So you have to have a good plan from the beginning of what you're going to be doing. With a Megillah, it does not have as strict laws. So a lot of people, when they write their first holy book, they're going to be writing Megillah, right? That's the first thing people start with. So they have something that they don't have that strict law of it having to be written in order. The mezuzah has to be written in order, and the tefillin have to be written in order. So those, you got to be a little bit more of an expert before you start writing those. Good to start off with the Megillah. That's what my teacher taught me. I should start with the Megillah. Okay, so we just mentioned the size of the kulmus. The quill should really be 1/6 of the gaps, because you have your smaller letters are going to be 3 by 3, but you're going to have big letters that are 6 tall. So you want to be able to have enough for the bigger letters as well between your guidelines. We have with us here today, we have some DO. I'm going to pass this out as well. I actually have a few different types of
DO.
DO is ink. That's a special type of ink that we're going to define on the next couple of slides. This DO is regular DO. This is something called midalel. This is thinner, and depends on how humid your climate is, how thick your ink's going to be. Sometimes you need to add thinner. And well, I'm talking about these bottles that I have here. This stuff is called pe'er. This stuff is actually conditioner for your parchment if it's too fuzzy. It's a little bit too fuzzy, you use pe'er. But I'll let you take a look at these inks here. I'll talk about what's in them. It's not just Parker ink or Pilot ink or Bic. I'm doing a lot of advertising here for different types of pens. So it has to. We know it's a tradition that goes all the way back to Moshe to Moses that a Torah scroll has to be written with this ink called do. And the Shulchan Aruch tells us, the Code of Jewish Law tells us it should be black. If it's another color like gold, it wouldn't be valid. So it's got to be written in black. And we'll talk about what this stuff is made of. So it has tree sap, it has honey, it has gallnut juice, it has copper sulfate, ferrous sulfate, gum arabic. All these are the special ingredients. And I put them in, where did I put it? Oh, here it is. This is my inkwell, my Kesses Sofer, my special Sofer inkwell. I'll bring this over to you. It's got a little special place where you can put your feather.
Oh,
There you go. Yeah. And that's what I use. So nowadays, most of these things have gum arabic in them, and they have a lot of them have the ferrous sulfate and the copper sulfate, and this is what we are using whenever we're writing today. And like I mentioned to you, we have the regular thicker ink, and then I brought that midalel, which is that thinner. If it starts to get a little bit too thick and goopy and is hard to work with, you add a little bit of midalel, and then it does a lot better for you. But you can't let it turn grayish. It's got to be black still. But you want to make sure that you can work with it. Sometimes, depending on where you're living, you could run into it getting a little bit too congealed. Also, it can happen even if you're not living in a climate where the humidity is affecting you. If you just leave stuff in your inkwell for too long without using it, you might want to add a little midalel to be able to give it some light. So we'll talk about the parchment. I'm going to let you feel some of this parchment. I'm going to bring you this parchment that I used for the Mezuzah. What? And then I'm going to bring you some parchment that I used for the Megillah. Here, I'll pick it up right now. Here's my Megillah. Oh, it's over there. I'll give you a lot of parchment to feel. There you go. Yeah, this is most of a Megillah right here. And here, I'll give you a part that I worked on. But you can't make fun of me for my one mistake. I had an ink drop right there. It was terrible. I know, it was the worst. Here, you can feel it then.
the pencil.
It's velvet. Yes, it's velvet, 100%. Yeah. Is it okay if I leave this here?
Sure.
And if you want to feel this also, you can feel it's the same type of stuff. And we're writing on that fluffier side as opposed to the smooth side. The ink wouldn't take well to the smooth side.
Oh, sure.
It goes on the fluffy side. So we call this cloth. That's the hide of a kosher animal. And it doesn't have to necessarily be slaughtered with shvita in a special ritually acceptable manner, as long as it comes from a kosher animal, like a cow's hide or a calf hide. Fish skin can't be used. Can't use fishies, not for this. So it would smell a little bit funny. You can't exactly have nasty odors wafting off of your Torah scroll. That wouldn't be so appropriate. Wouldn't be so nice for the Torah. Trying to honor the Torah and make it out of stinky materials, not so nice. There's 3 levels of the hide. It's gvil, which is the top layer below the hair. Then you have the next layer called klaf, and the lowest layer, which is called duxustus. That's closest to the flesh. Torahs can be written on the top 2, gvil or klaf, and tefillin mezuzahs are only written on klaf. The use of gvil today is really uncommon. pretty much most cloth is from an embryo of a calf, and it makes really fine, nice cloth. Yeah. And of course, whenever you're dealing with hives, you gotta tan them. Now that part doesn't smell so great, but at least after the end of it, once they're all washed off and clean, they smell okay. But they're soaked in water, and then they're tanned in a lime wash for several days until the hairs fall off. They're hung to dry. They're re-soaked and stretched on a wooden frame, like you see over here, and they're sanded to make them, like you said, it felt like velvet, makes them velvety smooth and ready to be written on. But if it's too velvety, we use that thing I showed you called pear, this little bottle, to make it a little smoother. If it's just a little, I mean, I've had cloth that felt like it was, ready to be sheared. Right. So you want to make sure that it's that you can write on it. When we make this parchment, we do it lishma. We do it for the sake of the mitzvah. So the tanning process has to be done lishma, with intention for the holiness to be used as a Torah or tefillin, phylacteries, or mezuzah. And it has to be done by a Torah observant Jew, keeps the laws. And when they're doing it, they say l'shem kedusha sefer Torah, tefillin, and mezuzah at the outset of the tanning process. Whenever I go to write anything or fix anything, let's say I'm fixing a sefer Torah, before I write anything or scratch anything, I'm saying l'shem kedusha sefer Torah. That everything that I'm doing should be for the purpose of fulfilling the mitzvah and the sanctity of the Torah. Now we'll talk about sirtut. So you notice both on the mezuzah and on the Megillah that you had these guidelines, see these lines that are scratched in. Now, this person over here is doing it by hand. I've seen in Israel, they have machines that go down the entire parchment and make the sirtut across, as opposed to individuals having to do it by hand and measure it out. You could do it like that, but that takes a little while. You can do it with a machine also. So you have these guidelines, and these guidelines, it says in the Shulchan Aruch, in the Code of, it says in the Code of Jewish Law that a mezuzah needs sirtut, and if one wrote it without it, it wouldn't be valid. You have to have these guidelines. Without it, you can't write it. Yeah. And in order to write on the cloth, the sirtut has to be manually scored. Like I mentioned, you could do it. When I say manually, I'm not trying to indicate that you can't use a machine at all, right? You can use machines to do it, but people oftentimes do it with an awl, and they're scored along the right and left margins also, as you can see. You have those lines on the edges as well to be able to give you guidelines. But I've seen machines that score it all the way across. It could be they're using that by hand, but I want you to know that it's not like you don't have to do every single line. If you're doing multiple lines in one shot, you're fine. And that's what I remember seeing. Gidon. I actually have some of these. I brought you some sinews. I'm going to show them to you. So these aren't used in a mezuzah, but this Megillah that I have, I'll show it to the camera here. Here's my Megillah that I'm writing. So this Megillah has 24 of these, I think. So I have to sew them together at the end. But I sew them together not with cloth, with any type of fabric, with thread. I sew them together with sinews. This is also from a tushrad. So I don't know if you want to touch it or not. You don't have to. But if you decide you want to, this is sinew right here. This came off of an animal. If you don't want to, it's okay.
It's very touching.
Oh yeah, take this one.
No,
It's hard.
It's actually
Like an uncooked noodle.
Oh, wow, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right. So those are sinews. And it's called gidin or gid. And they're from the calf area of the cow or a bull. They remove it, they dry it. And like it says here, the outer hard shell is removed, which reveals many threads. They're pulled off, twined together, and they make these strong Gideon strings that they use to sew up Torah scrolls, to sew up Megillas, and some opinions require them to be made lishma for the sake of the mitzvah, for the sake of the holiness of the Torah, Tefillin, or Megillos, which also would have to be done by a Torah observant adult male or female. Some use Gidon to sew together separate Torah, Megillos, or some people even have books of Nach, of the prophets, or the writings that are also sewn up with Gidon. They also use them to close up the tefillin boxes. After they put the different parchments inside, they sew it shut with Gidon as well. Let's keep going. Now we're going to get into the buyer's guide. As you see, I made this in 2020. Been a little while. Okay, off we go. So we've spoken about DO already. And I want to show you something. It's a big, sad thing. In fact, I just had one. Here's one. So you've just felt parchment. You know what parchment feels like.
Mhm.
Feel this. Tell me if you think it's parchment. Stinger.
No, it just feels like paper.
It is paper.
Uh-huh.
There are plenty of people, unfortunately, a couple of things happen. I'll mention two things that happen. One is the one that I hope happens, and the other one's a little bit more malicious. There's a lot of people, they buy a mezuzah, they see a beautiful case, and they're like, wow, I really want to see this on my house. And there's a little something inside, but it's not really a mezuzah. Now, hopefully that was just somebody modeling what you're supposed to do. Saying, oh, I'm not trying to say this is a mezuzah. I'm trying to just show them what should be going inside. There's other people who I think really are charlatans that are putting these pieces of paper in there and really trying to sell it as a mezuzah. Now, this one, I would be able, if I opened it right away, even though it's rolled and it looks like it's a mezuzah, it doesn't have the writing on the outside, right? God's name, remember I mentioned, the Shin Daled Yod that stands for Shem Dalsas Yisrael, the one who guards the doors of Israel. So it doesn't have any of the writing on the outside. Also, it's rolled wrong. It's rolled sideways. So that was a dead giveaway. The moment I opened the mezuzah that this came in, I was like, my dear friend, this is paper. There's no guidelines. I can feel that that's not DO, that's not the special ink, that's a photocopy. And it's rolled sideways. So it was easy enough with this one, but that's an important thing. And there are individuals that sell photocopies of mezuzahs to unsuspecting customers. And it's important to realize that DO is thick. It protrudes from the page. That's one thing. We felt cloth, so now we know the fuzzy feel of cloth. And we know now the sirtut, the guidelines. These are all things that would give away a fake mezuzah. Right. Another way to tell a photocopy is by the material, right? The mezuzah is written on parchment that's made for the sake of the mitzvah, not paper. Parchment's going to be thicker. It's going to be harder to rip. It'll have one side smooth, one side fuzzy. It's not going to be a photocopy like this. Now, I'll also mention one other thing, because I'm not sure if I get into it in this presentation, at least in the written word, but I want to make sure to mention it. That there's a lot of people that get these very small mezuzahs that it's very hard. The smaller you get, the harder it is to write. You can have some really beautiful small mezuzahs that are written by absolute experts, but I've seen many, many small mezuzahs that words are touching each other, which is a problem, or the letters aren't formed properly. And a lot of times also I've even seen those as photocopies. I like getting bigger mezuzahs just because they're easier to write, they're easier to check, and they are more likely to be kosher, just in my experience checking through mezuzahs. Let's keep going. So the last thing which we've seen together already is that sirtut, is that those guidelines. If you're looking at a mezuzah that you're thinking about buying and it doesn't have those guidelines, it's not a real mezuzah. Now, it's more rare that I find one written with real DO, real kosher ink, on real cloth, on real parchment without the sirtut, usually a couple of those issues will come together. But that should also be a dead giveaway. If you see a mezuzah that doesn't have the sirtut, that was another thing when I showed you this mezuzah, which was that paper. There's no guidelines on this photocopy. Right, so that's another thing that and you wouldn't be able to make them on paper. You'd scratch right through it, and you wouldn't be able to do it. So that's another thing that would be a dead giveaway if you have a real mezuzah or if this is some sort of photocopy. And the second most common issue that I've found checking mezuzahs is that the purchaser bought a case with no scroll inside. Right? With us, it's the inside that counts. It's what's on the inside. The pneumius, what's inside us, not just what we show on the outside. The mezuzah is not a case. And so many people, and some of them are unsuspecting, and I cannot blame them. Other ones really think that it's about the case, and they put up this pretty case, and they completely miss the point of what they're supposed to be doing. They miss the point of the mitzvah. The mitzvah is for the scroll. The mitzvah is for what it says in the scroll. But there are also plenty of people that really were trying to get a mezuzah, and they don't. There's a joke phrase that they say: you wanted an esrog, you ended up with a lemon, right? You wanted to do the mitzvah, but you ended up with the wrong thing. Now, sometimes the sellers were not trying to deceive people; they were only selling a case. But there are times where I feel like people are trying to sell a complete mezuzah and only give a case. I've heard stories where, I don't like to suspect people for no reason, but I've heard some pretty bad stories where it was pretty evident that the seller was trying to pull the wool over someone's eyes.
Many people think the word mezuzah means case.
Right.
They don't even think, the scroll is like a bonus in people's minds.
Right. So that's another myth we're debunking.
The opposite.
The scroll's the point, right? It's nice to have a pretty case.
Mezuzah is the scroll.
Yeah.
The case is not even a mezuzah. It's
Right,
a
the case
mezuzah
isn't anything. Mezuzah itself means doorpost, but
Yeah.
the mitzvah that we have is to put the scroll on the doorpost. It happens to be most of my own cases, the cases themselves, $5 or less. But the scrolls inside were $100 because they're very, very nicely written. Yeah. One of the last things I did when I left Israel, I had a friend who was a scribe. He was a cipher, and he wrote many beautiful mezuzahs. But his study was so hot. It was so hot where he was writing. He was my study partner. And I said, you know what? I really need some mezuzahs. And he said, you know what? I really need an air conditioner. I said, I'll give you my window unit for 9 mezuzahs. And we did it. So I got my mezuzahs that I put in my apartment in Portland, Oregon. I got them in Israel. My friend who was a scribe who traded them to me for an air conditioner. It's a fun story. And we'll keep going here. Okay. So other Sifrei Kodesh, other holy books can be made of more than one piece of parchment sewn together. A mezuzah is only one piece of parchment with 22 lines. If somebody gives you some sort of patchwork mezuzah and says, oh, but it's sewed together by sinews, be like, no, that's for other things. That's for a Torah. That's for a Megillah. Don't give me some patchwork mezuzah. Don't do that. That's not for mezuzahs. Gidden are not for mezuzahs. Okay. Like we mentioned, the outside of the mezuzah has 2 things on it. It has Hashem's name, Shin Dalad Yod, and it has this other Kabbalistic writing, which says Kuzu, B'muchsaz Kuzu, which really stands for Shem Elokeinu Hashem. Hashem Elokeinu Hashem, and it's written opposite where those words are written inside the mezuzah. If that's not on the mezuzah, it ain't real. So this photocopy that I showed you, which I found inside someone's case.
Every mezuzah has the kuzu?
Yes, they're supposed to. So, b'diavad, it would be kosher without it, as I recall, meaning if it didn't have it, would that completely invalidate it? No. But every mezuzah is supposed to have it. It's brought in the Code of Jewish Law. This one, as you see, does not have either of those things.
Mhm.
Also, this is folded on.
They didn't bother photocopying double-sided.
And decided,
There's that quick of a job.
right, they're like, at least it's not in color, huh? See them somebody. Yes. Ah. And we'll keep going here. So the letters are not allowed to be touching one another. Like you
So
can
this
see.
is just so you, before you were talking about what to like just know is fraudulent from the outset.
Right.
Now it sounds like you're
These
going,
are,
well, we're going things that could be very kosher initial mezuzahs,
yeah,
but due to
Over
the
time.
temperature and time, the ink can,
Right.
the letters can get fudged. which is-
and like the rabbi just said, those are your two biggest culprits, temperature and time, but also I would say water.
Mhm.
Especially for an exterior mezuzah that's a little bit more
Mm.
susceptible to the elements.
Mhm.
You want to get a waterproof case for anything that's going to be an exterior mezuzah on a garage, on a front door, on a back door. And it can happen also that the scribe misses the fact that the letters are touching, which would be no good from the outset. I have seen mezuzahs where I really didn't think it was the weather. I think they were not as careful as they should have been. You see over here, there's a little touching. That's a big problem. Can't be. Some of the letters have what we call coats and thorns. If they're gone on the yud no thorns, you have a problem. And then you have some letters that have crowns. Without the crowns, it's going to be okay, but it's not great. They're supposed to have these crowns. Right, this is without the crowns. This is with the crowns. Right, the crowns you really are supposed to have. If you didn't have them, it'd still be kosher, but you're supposed to have them. These are all things that a sofer can tell you when he checks what you have. Let's keep going. Holes in the cloth.
Mhm.
Problem. If I'm checking through and I find a big hole in the cloth, then I have an issue, right? It says over here, yeah, cloth sholem, that the parchment has to be whole. Shlo yehe bo nekavim, it shouldn't have any holes. She'ein hadayo over alav, that the ink doesn't pass over. Dahainu shlo tehe os nires bo chaluk l'shtayim. It can't be that the letter looks like it's split into two. There's an idea also.
What if it's not split, it's just a hole?
So the idea there is that everything has to be mukaf and kavil. All of the letters have to be completely surrounded by parchment. If it's surrounded by rip, then it's not surrounded by parchment. All right. Can't have anything cut in half. No breaks. Now, if you have a letter with what I'll call a hairline fracture,
Mm.
small. I take it and I hold it up to the light and I can see it's crack, right? So I can fix that.
Mm.
You're allowed to do that. Now remember, I said that it has to be written in order. So if that letter was really puzzled, it was really invalid, and I went back and I fixed it, then I wrote it out of order. But if it's a very hairline fracture, there are plenty of opinions that it's still kosher. And in that case, the Mishnah Berurah, one of the great halachic authorities of the last century, held that you can go in and fix it because really, worst case scenario, it's still kosher. It's not what you want. And in that kind of scenario where it was still kosher, you can go in and fix it. But this would be too big. That'd be a little bit too big. And those again are all things that the sofer is checking. I'm also looking for faded letters, right? A dark gray, that's okay. A light gray, not so much, right? And that you really have to have somebody with a trained eye who knows when it switches from being still okay to no longer okay. That happens sometimes with extreme heat. Now, this is really my last slide that I want to go over. This is practical advice that I really want you to take with you. You got to get your mezuzahs from a God-fearing person. You got to get them from a Yirei Shemayim, someone who cares about these mitzvos, about these commandments, and takes it seriously. There's a lot of halachos, a lot of laws with regard to mezuzah that a buyer would never ever know. Now you know, you're educated consumers now, but not everybody. Now, when I buy a mezuzah, I actually look not. I don't look just at the case. I'm looking at the mezuzah. I want to see how it's written. If I see letters touching each other, letters that are cracked, letters that are faded, I'm out on that mezuzah. I'm moving to the next one. You have to make sure you have weatherproof cases, especially for the ones that are on those exterior doors. You have to check your mezuzahs once every 3.5 years. It's better to get a mezuzah with large print. It's very difficult to write a small mezuzah. It's more likely to be puzzled to be invalid. And I've seen many more small mezuzahs that are photocopies and many more small mezuzahs that were just written by, for lack of a better word, charlatans. Even if they are on cloth with sirtut and DO,
It's very
they're
common.
written horribly sloppily and they're not kosher.
It's very common that people, their, Venetian case, glass blown case is small. They're always wanting the small mezuzahs. So I tell them we could get it. It's more expensive to get one that's written to code. But
If you're getting one that's $18, not good, unless you're getting it subsidized through Chabad. But otherwise, it's not good. You should check the words. Now, this is really for a cipher, but I want you to know it anyways. There's words that appear multiple times in the mezuzah spelled differently. The word mezuzos is spelled differently in two different places in the mezuzah. Once in the first paragraph, once in the second. The word totafos spelled differently in the two paragraphs. And there's in the first paragraph, there's two words that are in singular that are in plural in the next paragraph, and I've seen them switched before. You have decha in the first and yedchem in the second, einecha and einechem. I've seen Yodecha and Yedchem switched. I've seen that switched. So those are things that I always highlight to make sure when I am checking that I'm looking at those. And those are a lot of the things that could make you an educated consumer when you are looking for a mezuzah. And I hope you enjoyed learning all about mezuzah, learning all about Safra supplies. And I'd be happy to take some questions. Should probably finish the recording here then.
No,
Thank you.
yeah, well, just to thank Rabbi Chastain
Pleasure.
for this very high class presentation. And it educated me. I knew some of it, but not all of it. I really appreciate it. And the main thing is that as you may start off, this is not just a theoretical idea, and it's not just like a geek behind the scenes technical craft. Kosher mezuzah, as he mentioned, protects the doors, protects everybody in the door in that house, even when they're away from the house, when you're in a car. So now some just to give you some people that sounds a little voodoo like, oh, you got these kosher mezuzahs, nothing bad will happen to you if you don't. So this idea was explained in 1976 by the Rebbe, Rabbi Menachem Mendel Schneerson, who explained how it's like a helmet, right? Life is a jungle. Life is full of ups and downs, and things can happen. But a mezuzah that is kosher, written by the divine will according to the laws, as the rabbi mentioned, is like putting armor on in life. And that's the best we can do. We want to do it all the ways. So,
Thank you so much.
Question, yes, so we'll end the recording and then we'll do questions.
You were on the right list. Just you go back down to the bottom again.
Yeah.